Hello, good morning. This is Playbook's managing editor and author, Jack Blanchard. It is Thursday, April the 17th, and there is a lot going on in DC this week. The big news this morning, driving the day, if you like, will be the arrival of the Italian leader, Giorgia Meloni, into the White House. We will see that famous scene that we've all get used to watching over the last few weeks of Donald Trump sat there with a leader alongside them and journalists throwing questions at them. So that will be a big moment. And they will be talking about trade and tariffs, the main thing on every overseas leader's mind when they meet the president at the moment. The other story that everyone's talking about, of course, are the various court cases surrounding the deportation of all those people to El Salvador last month. And you can expect that to dominate the conversation as well today. Two different judges going at the White House in two different ways over that. And you just know that is going to keep people occupied throughout the rest of the week and for many weeks to come. And there is a court case happening this afternoon that many in the White House will be watching over the decision to try and keep the Associated Press out of Donald Trump's briefing. There will be lots of people, certainly in my profession, watching that one closely. But I want to talk about tariffs as our main thing today, and about how the White House is dealing with this tariffs policy. And I'm delighted to say that we have with us our Capitol Bureau Chief and Senior Washington Correspondent, Rachael Bade. Rachael, good morning. How are you doing?
Hey there, Jack. How are you? Good to be with you.
It is a pleasure to have you. This tariffs thing, since Donald Trump's Liberation Day, it has just dominated the discourse. Other stories have come and gone, but this just keeps coming back. We've seen it causing such a roller coaster on the markets. It's dominating the thoughts in every single capital city all around the world. Do you get the sense that in the White House, they're kind of worried about the way this has landed and the way that this has gone, or are they kind of pretty happy with how this whole policy's played out so far?
Kind of worried. I think that's kind of generous, Jack. I mean, look, there's the public posture, which is everything is hunky-dory. This is exactly what Donald Trump wanted. But I mean, privately, a lot of people are worried. You're right. I mean, not so much worried about, the freak out the rest of the world is feeling right now, but about what this is going to mean for the economy here back in the US. I have to say, I did hear a lot of this sort of sense of relief, I would say, when Trump announced last week that he was going to pause these reciprocal tariffs. People were glad that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent sort of got to him and made the case for why he needed to do this. But I was hearing pretty much right away that people were panicked that he would see the headlines that, the president blinked, that he caved, and that he would be angry and sort of double down at some point. I think people are happy that he is sort of letting the pause play out. But look, I mean, 3 months, 90 days is going to go by very fast. What happens in 90 days when they don't have all these tariff agreements in place? I mean, people want to see action and they want to make sure there's not political blowback from this.
I mean, it's crazy. Like normally negotiating a bilateral trade deal with another country is something that takes years just to do one, right?
Just to do one.
Watch these play out just to do one. Donald Trump
Yeah.
is proposing pulling off 70 of them or something like that in 3 months. I mean, nobody has ever done anything like that. And, he's an impressive person in some ways, but I've never seen a country even attempt something like this. So you're quite right to say that.
Jack, they're going to be sleeping less than you do with
Playbook. Impossible. You mentioned Scott Bessent, and he's obviously sort of taken the credit, if you like, for steering Donald Trump in one direction. You've got this incredible story out this morning about the other big voice in Donald Trump's ear around tariffs, which is his Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick. And we have reported several times now in Playbook and in stories on the Politico website about people hating on Howard Lutnick. Just tell us about that. Why do so many people seem to dislike this guy?
It actually goes back a few months. And, when I started hearing that his job was sort of in jeopardy and we started reporting that, he might actually get canned, I just had this innate sense of like deja vu, Jack, because back during the transition when Lutnick was sort of overseeing the transition as chair, people were saying back then that the president was going to get rid of him, that he might actually, be booted as transition chair. There was this concern about him mixing business with transition, official business with actual private business, his private company. There were concerns about him going on television saying things that he was not sanctioned to say. Sound familiar, doesn't it? But back then, again, people predicting that he wasn't going to be around long. And what happened? He actually got a cabinet position and he's around all the time. And something similar is actually happening right now, Jack, in that, people are they're talking a big talk about, trying to get him ousted. But the reality is this guy has a 30-year relationship with Donald Trump. They're friends, and not just, average friends who actually get very close friends. Donald Trump, was with him, calling him when Lutnick went through cancer. Lutnick was with him when he became this pariah after January 6th. I mean, they were friends in social circles in New York for a long time. And because of that, he has been able to survive, scandals like this tariff rollout, for instance, that would actually, mean, any other Commerce secretary would typically get the boot here. And one other thing I want to point out, if Donald Trump is not willing to fire someone like Michael Waltz over the Signalgate scandal, somebody who he doesn't have, frankly, a long relationship with, he's not going to get rid of, Howard Lutnick. So I think people are hopeful, but I don't see him going anywhere.
Tell me about Howard Lutnick's character, because I read in your piece that in many ways he's quite similar to Donald Trump. He's got this sort of braggadocio New York thing going on. Is that fair?
Oh, yeah. I mean, one of the things that I discovered in sort of researching for this story was this podcast from just a couple of weeks ago. He was on All In, the podcast, just like 3 weeks ago, and it really didn't get the play that it should have gotten. I mean, we saw him for 2 hours talking over the hosts, just dishing on the most colorful stories I have heard anyone in the administration, tell. I mean, typically we don't see a cabinet secretary go on television or on a podcast in this sense and actually sort of brag about the role they have had with the administration. That is exactly what he did for like 120 minutes. And frankly, I learned a lot about that. I mean, he apparently claims credit for coming up with the concept of Doge. He claims credit for pitching this idea of cutting $1 trillion to Donald Trump. And once he got the green light, flying to Texas, where he met with Elon Musk in what he described as like a 1,200 square foot tiny home/apartment that was stocked with like college campus like dorm furniture with plastic on it. I mean, just really colorful things. He boasts that he was the first call Trump made when he wanted to talk about potentially annexing the Panama Canal, or this putting together this sort of $5 million, what is it? What are they calling it? The gold Visa card. And that he was the one who sort of ran this down and found out that it was possible. It's just like, this is the kind of thing that a lot of folks, if they went out there and shared this level of details, they probably get fired. Instead, Lutnick is doing it like willy-nilly. And I think that that's why a lot of people don't like him, number one. But I do think that there is definitely some jealousy. I mean, he clearly is very close with Trump. He talked on this podcast about how him and Trump used to chase the same girls in New York. He just the level of detail and the closeness of that relationship is definitely unmatched, I would say, with anyone in the administration.
And they have a regular meeting, right? Tell us about that.
That's right. He is, from our understanding, the only cabinet secretary who has flown with Trump down to Mar-a-Lago every weekend. He's with him every time. And on Friday nights, Trump, he typically enjoys his ice cream sundae at Mar-a-Lago, often on the patio. And apparently he expects Lutnick to be sitting by his side and to be talking to him about the week, who's up, who's down, basically just digesting what has happened and where the story is going. So, I mean, these guys are pals.
And does that mean Lutnick's around to stay? And does that mean Donald Trump's tariff policy is here to stay?
Well, one thing I think is a lot of people have criticized Lutnick, saying he's the reason the tariff policy has been so sort of sporadic. They say that he feeds into Donald Trump's sort of worst impulses, tells him basically what he wants to hear, doesn't warn him about the economic challenges that might come with some of these tariffs. But, the thing about this sort of dynamic is that even if you remove Lutnick from the equation, I'm not really convinced that the whole tariff rollout would have been any better. I mean, the reality is the reason why he goes out on TV and says one thing and then Trump does something else, or he tells, business leaders one thing and it ends up being wrong, is because the president himself flip-flops on this issue all the time, depending on who he spoke to last or where his mind is in a certain moment. So, in some ways, putting the blame all on Lutnick, which a lot of Trump allies are doing, and not just a lot of Trump allies, basically everyone who's close with Trump outside the White House is blaming him. It is a little unfair. Now, realistically, they do expect that he should be tougher with Trump, more in the line of, or in the vein of Scott Bessent. And you asked one more question, Jack. I forget what it was. Oh, will he be around? That's, I mean, I think he's going to be around for a while. But one longtime Trump ally said to me the other day that everybody in Trump world is dispensable at some point, and that if the president feels like the economy is tanking, that the tariff rollout is just a total mess, if at some point he needs a head to roll, it's very obvious whose head is going to be the one that gets chopped off, and that is the guy who's been the face of the tariff rollout. That's Lutnik.
We will be watching him very closely over the next few weeks. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. You can find more of this conversation by listening to Playbook Daily Briefing wherever you get your podcasts. And for more of our thoughts on this and what else you need to know today, read Playbook this morning if you haven't already, and you really should have done, at politico.com/playbook. I'm Jack Blanchard. That was Rachael Bade. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be with you again tomorrow.